Jake Martinez rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the glowing screen in front of him. The numbers kept dancing around, making no sense after 12 hours of straight work. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he kept sipping it anyway. The research station felt emptier than usual tonight. His partner, Lisa, was supposed to return from the main colony tomorrow, leaving him alone with just the humming machines and the endless wind outside. The frozen moon of KPLER 442b never stopped being hostile. Even inside the heated station, Jake could hear the ice storms howling against the metal walls. He pulled his jacket tighter and went back to calibrating the atmospheric processors. The work was boring but important. These machines would help turn this frozen wasteland into something humans could actually live on. A strange sound made him pause. It was different from the usual wind noise. Jake frowned and listened carefully. There it was again, a rhythmic, scratching sound coming from the direction of the main airlock. He checked his watch, 3 a.m. Nobody should be out there in this weather. The scratching came again, more urgent this time. Jake pushed back from his desk and walked toward the airlock area. The sound was definitely coming from outside the door. Maybe some debris had gotten stuck in the storm. He activated the external camera and looked at the screen. What he saw made his blood freeze. A massive creature stood in the swirling snow outside the airlock. It was at least 8 feet tall, covered in thick fur that seemed to shimmer like crystal in the station's lights. The creature was standing on its hind legs, using its front paws to scratch at the door. But that wasn't what made Jake's heart race. The creature was holding something in its mouth. No, not just holding, carrying very carefully, like a mother cat with kittens. Jake could see 3 small bundles wrapped in what looked like torn fabric. The creature's eyes were looking directly at the camera, and Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. He knew what this creature was. Everyone on the moon knew about the frost wolves. They were the apex predators of this frozen world, standing taller than a human and strong enough to tear through metal. The colonists had strict orders to avoid them at all costs. These creatures were supposed to be mindless killers, driven only by hunger and territorial instincts, but this one was different. This one was asking for help. Jake's hands shook as he reached for the communications panel. He should call security. He should report this immediately. But something in the creature's eyes stopped him. There was intelligence there, and something else, desperation. The creature scratched at the door again, then carefully placed the 3 bundles on the ground. It stepped back and sat down, waiting. Jake could see the bundles more clearly now. They were small, maybe the size of human babies, and they weren't moving at all. The station's AI system suddenly activated. Warning. Large predator detected. Outside main airlock. Recommend immediate evacuation to secure area. Jake ignored the warning. He kept staring at the screen, watching the creature. It hadn't moved aggressively at all. It was just sitting there, waiting patiently, occasionally looking down at the 3 still bundles with what could only be described as concern. The creature was female, Jake realized. The way she moved, the way she looked at those bundles, this was a mother. And those bundles were her babies. Jake's training told him to stay away. Every safety protocol screamed at him to keep the airlock sealed. But his human instincts told him something completely different. This mother had brought her children to him for help. Somehow, she believed that he could save them. He moved to the airlock controls. His finger hovered over the opening sequence. Once he started this, there would be no going back. If he was wrong about the creature's intentions, he would probably die. But if he was right, the creature seemed to sense his hesitation. She stood up slowly, being careful not to make any sudden movements. Then she did something that made Jake's decision for him. She picked up one of the bundles and held it up toward the camera. Even through the swirling snow, Jake could see that the small creature inside was completely still. Its fur was white, with frost, and its tiny body was rigid. The mother was showing him that her babies were dying. Jake's finger pressed the button before he could think about it anymore. The outer airlock door began to cycle open with a loud hiss. The creature's ears perked up, but she didn't move toward the door. She waited until it was completely open, then carefully picked up all 3 bundles again. she moved slowly into the airlock, being careful not to damage anything with her massive form. Jake watched through the internal camera as she gently placed her babies on the floor of the small chamber. Then she looked directly at the camera again and made a sound that was almost like a whimper. Jake sealed the outer door and began the decontamination cycle. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. What was he doing? This went against every rule, every safety protocol, every piece of common sense he had ever learned. But as he watched the mother creature carefully arrange her babies on the airlock floor, making sure they were positioned safely, he knew he had made the right choice. This wasn't a mindless predator. This was a mother who would do anything to save her children, even trust the strange aliens who had invaded her world. The decontamination cycle finished with a soft beep. Jake's hand moved to the inner door controls. In a few seconds he would be face to face with one of the most dangerous creatures on the moon. But looking at her through the camera, watching her gentle movements and desperate eyes, Jake wasn't afraid anymore. He was ready to help. The inner airlock door slid open with a soft whoosh. Jake stepped back as the massive creature entered his station, moving with surprising grace for something so large. She kept her head low and her movements slow, as if she understood that sudden actions might scare him. Jake had seen pictures of frost wolves before, but nothing had prepared him for seeing one up close. She was beautiful in a terrifying way. Her fur looked like it was made of silver and ice, catching the station's lights and throwing them back in tiny sparkles. Her eyes were a pale blue color, almost white, and they never left his face. She carefully picked up her 3 babies and placed them on the floor in front of Jake. Then she stepped back and sat down, waiting. Jake knelt down beside the small bundles, his heart breaking at what he saw. The babies were clearly dying. Their fur was stiff with frost, and their tiny bodies were cold to the touch. They weren't breathing normally. Instead, they were taking tiny, shallow breaths that came too far apart. Their eyes were closed, and they didn't respond when Jake gently touched them. Jake looked up at the mother. She was watching him intently. Her head tilted slightly to one side. When their eyes met, she made a soft sound that was almost like a question. Jake had the strangest feeling that she was asking him what he thought, like a human parent might ask a doctor about their sick child. "I need to call for help," Jake said quietly. He didn't know if she could understand him, but talking felt natural. "My friend Lisa knows about animals. She can help us figure out what's wrong." The mother's ears perked up at the sound of his voice. She didn't seem afraid of him talking. If anything, she seemed to be listening carefully, as if she was trying to understand what he was saying. Jake moved slowly to his communication panel, keeping his movements gentle so he wouldn't startle her. The mother watched him, but didn't move from her position next to her babies. Jake sent an emergency message to Lisa Carter at the main colony, explaining the situation as best he could. Lisa's response came back within minutes, and Jake could hear the shock in her voice even through the text message. "Are you insane? Those things are killers. Get out of there now." But when Jake looked back at the mother, he saw something that made Lisa's words seem wrong. The massive creature had moved closer to her babies and was gently licking their faces with her large tongue. Her movements were so careful, so tender, that Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. "She's not a killer," Jake typed back. "She's just a mother trying to save her children." It took 3 more messages before Lisa agreed to come to the station. She would arrive by emergency shuttle in 2 hours. Until then, Jake was on his own with the mother and her dying babies. Jake went to the medical supply cabinet and pulled out a thermal blanket. He spread it on the floor next to the babies, then looked at the mother. She was watching him with those intelligent blue eyes, and Jake had the feeling she was trying to understand what he was doing. "This will help keep them warm," Jake said, gently moving the first baby onto the blanket. The mother tensed for a moment, then relaxed when she saw that Jake was being careful. She moved closer and sniffed the blanket, then made a soft sound that almost sounded like approval. Jake carefully moved the other 2 babies onto the blanket as well. The mother helped by gently nudging them with her nose, positioning them so they were close together. Jake was amazed at how gentle she was with her babies, and how she seemed to understand that he was trying to help Dot as they worked together. Jake began to notice things about the mother that surprised him. She was watching everything he did with intense concentration, as if she was trying to learn. When he brought over a small heater to warm the area around the babies, she observed how he plugged it in and turned it on. When he checked the baby's breathing with a small medical scanner, she watched the device carefully and seemed to understand that it was giving him information about her children. Most surprising of all, she began to anticipate what Jake needed. When he reached for another blanket, she was already looking toward the supply cabinet where he kept them. When he moved toward the medical scanner, she gently moved one of her babies into a better position for scanning. Jake was beginning to think that the frost wolves were much more intelligent than anyone had realized. This mother wasn't just acting on instinct. She was problem-solving, learning, and cooperating with him in ways that seemed almost human when Lisa's shuttle finally arrived. Jake could hear it landing outside through the station's thick walls. The mother's ears perked up at the sound, and she moved protectively closer to her babies, but she didn't seem afraid. She just seemed alert, ready to protect her children if necessary. Lisa came through the airlock wearing full protective gear and carrying a large medical kit. She stopped dead when she saw the mother sitting calmly beside her babies, watching Jake work at a computer terminal just a few feet away. "This is impossible," Lisa whispered. "They're not supposed to be intelligent, they're just animals." The mother turned her head toward Lisa and made a soft sound. It wasn't threatening or aggressive, it was almost like a greeting. Lisa's eyes went wide behind her protective visor. "Jake," she said quietly, "I think we need to completely rethink everything we know about these creatures." Jake looked up from the computer screen where he had been researching the baby's symptoms. "I think you're right. And I think that's the least of our problems. Lisa, I think these babies are dying from something we've never seen before. Something that might be spreading to others of their kind." The mother seemed to understand the serious tone in Jake's voice. She moved closer to her babies and looked at both humans with those intelligent blue eyes. In that moment, Jake realized that this was bigger than just saving 3 small creatures. This mother had come to them because she knew they were the only ones who could help not just her babies, but possibly her entire species. The real work was just beginning. Lisa slowly removed her protective helmet and set it on the floor. The mother Wolf watched her movements but remained calm, occasionally looking down at her babies with worried eyes. Jake had been right about one thing. This creature was definitely not acting like a mindless predator. "What have you found so far?" Lisa asked, kneeling down beside the 3 small bundles. She pulled out a handheld scanner and began taking readings of the baby's vital signs. "Their body temperature is dropping even with the heaters," Jake said, showing her the data on his tablet. "And look at this blood work I managed to get from the smallest one. There's something strange happening to their blood cells." Lisa frowned at the numbers on the screen. "This doesn't make sense. It looks like their blood is crystallizing. That's impossible for any living creature." The mother Wolf made a soft whimpering sound and moved closer to Lisa. She gently nudged Lisa's hand with her large nose, then looked down at her babies. Lisa's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. "She's trying to tell us something," Lisa whispered. "Jake, I think she understands that we're trying to help and she's trying to communicate with us." Jake nodded. "I've been watching her for the past 2 hours. She's incredibly intelligent. She learns from everything we do, and she seems to understand cause and effect better than some humans I know." Lisa ran more tests on the babies while the mother watched carefully. Every time Lisa moved to a new piece of equipment, the mother would observe how it worked. When Lisa needed to reposition one of the babies for a scan, the mother would gently help by moving the baby with her nose. "Jake, this is incredible," Lisa said after running several tests. "These babies are infected with some kind of crystalline virus. It's turning their blood into ice-like structures. I've never seen anything like it." The mother Wolf seemed to sense the serious tone in Lisa's voice. She moved closer to her babies and began licking their faces again, trying to warm them with her tongue. But Jake noticed that even the mother's saliva seemed unusually cold. "Lisa, I think the mother might be infected too," Jake said quietly. Look at her breath. It's creating ice crystals in the air. Lisa carefully examined the mother Volf, who allowed the inspection with surprising patience. The creature seemed to understand that Lisa was trying to help. When Lisa needed to look at her eyes, the mother held perfectly still. When Lisa wanted to check her mouth, the mother opened it willingly. You're right, Lisa said. She's infected, but not as badly as the babies. Adult frost wolves must have better resistance to whatever this is. They worked through the night, trying different treatments. The mother Volf never left her baby's side, but she also never got in the way of Jake and Lisa's work. She seemed to understand that they were doing everything they could to help Dot. As the hours passed, Jake began to notice something amazing. The mother Volf was learning to help them. When Jake needed a specific tool, she would look toward where he usually kept it. When Lisa needed better lighting for a procedure, the mother would move slightly to block the overhead lights that were creating shadows. She's actually helping us, Jake said in amazement. Look, she's positioning herself so that her body heat can warm the babies while we work. Lisa paused in her work and really looked at the mother Volf. Jake, I think this creature is smarter than we ever imagined. She's not just helping, she's collaborating with us. She's working as part of our team. The breakthrough came at dawn. Jake had been experimenting with the station's protein synthesis chamber, trying to create a substance that might neutralize the crystalline virus. The mother Volf had been watching his work intently, and when he finally produced a small amount of the experimental treatment, she made a soft sound that sounded almost like encouragement. I think this might work, Jake said, loading the treatment into an injection device. But we need to be very careful about the temperature. If it's too hot, it could hurt them. If it's too cold, it won't work at all. The mother Volf moved closer and gently picked up her smallest baby. She held the tiny creature in her mouth and looked at Jake, then slowly moved toward the treatment area. Jake's heart raced as he realized what she was doing. She's volunteering her baby to be the first test subject, Lisa whispered. She trusts us completely. Jake's hands shook as he prepared the injection. The mother Volf held her baby perfectly still, allowing Jake to administer the treatment. Then she gently placed the baby back on the warming blanket and looked at Jake with those intelligent blue eyes. She was waiting to see if it would work. For the first hour, nothing happened. The baby remained still and cold. But then, slowly, Jake began to notice small changes. The baby's breathing became more regular. Its body temperature started to rise. Slightly, the frost on its fur began to melt. It's working, Lisa said quietly. Jake, I think it's actually working. The mother Volf seemed to sense the change in her baby before Jake and Lisa did. She moved closer and began licking the baby's face with gentle strokes. For the first time since she had arrived at the station, she made a sound that could only be described as hopeful, but the treatment was complex and required constant monitoring. Jake realized that they would need the mother's help to make it work for all three babies. The heating had to be precise, and the babies needed to be positioned correctly for the medicine to work properly. We need to show her how to help, Jake sighed. She's smart enough to learn. Over the next few hours, Jake and Lisa taught the mother Volf how to help with the treatment. They showed her how to position her babies for maximum warmth. They taught her to recognize the signs that meant the treatment was working. They even showed her how to operate some of the simpler controls on the medical equipment. The mother Volf learned everything with incredible speed. She began to anticipate what Jake and Lisa needed before they asked for it. She learned to read the numbers on the medical displays and would alert them. When something changed. By the time the sun was fully up, 2 of the 3 babies were showing clear signs of recovery. The third baby was still struggling, but it was breathing better than before. The mother Volf looked at Jake and Lisa with gratitude that needed no words. She had brought her dying babies to the only creatures on the moon who could save them, and her trust had been rewarded. But Jake had a feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. The second baby opened its eyes for the first time in days. Its tiny blue eyes looked around the room with curiosity, and when it saw its mother, it made a small sound that was almost like a purr. The mother Volf's entire body seemed to relax, with relief as she gently nuzzled her recovering child. Jake watched the touching scene while monitoring the third baby, who was still struggling but showing slow improvement. Lisa was running more tests, trying to understand exactly how the crystalline virus worked and why their treatment was effective. "Jake, come look at this," Lisa called from her workstation. "I've been analyzing the virus samples, and I think I know where it came from." Jake walked over to Lisa's computer screen, leaving the mother Volf to tend to her babies. The mother had proven herself to be an excellent caregiver, carefully positioning her babies for optimal warmth, and even learning to check their breathing patterns like a trained nurse. "The virus seems to be synthetic," Lisa continued, pointing to the data. On her screen, "It's not natural. Someone or something created this." "Created it?" Jake frowned. "But who would want to kill the frost wolves, and why?" Before Lisa could answer, the mother Volf made a series of sounds that were different from anything they had heard before. She was looking directly at them, and her sounds seemed purposeful, almost like she was trying to speak. Jake and Lisa turned to face her. The mother Volf stood up and walked to the far wall of the station. Using her claws, she began scratching marks into the metal surface. The scratches weren't random. They formed patterns, shapes that looked almost like symbols. "Is she trying to write something?" Lisa asked in amazement. Jake moved closer to examine the marks. The mother Volf had scratched a series of circles, connected by lines with numbers scratched next to each circle. Jake's heart began to race as he realized what he was looking at. "Lisa, these aren't just random marks," Jake said. "These look like mathematical equations, and these circles, they look like a map." The mother Volf made another sound and scratched more symbols into the wall. This time, the symbols clearly showed the research station in the center, surrounded by many other locations marked with specific numbers. Lisa grabbed her tablet and began photographing the wall markings. "Jake, I think she's trying to tell us something important. These numbers next to each location, they might be telling us how many of her kind are in each place." The mother Volf seemed to understand that they were beginning to comprehend her message. She moved to another section of the wall and began scratching more urgently. This time, her markings showed the same locations but with much smaller numbers. Some locations had no numbers at all. "She's showing us two different time periods," Jake realized. "The first set of markings shows where her people used to be, and the second set shows where they are now." Lisa studied the markings carefully. "Jake, if these numbers are accurate, the Frost Volf population has dropped by more than half, and it's still dropping." The mother Volf made a low, mournful sound and touched one of the locations on the wall with her paw. The number next to it was 0. She looked at Jake and Lisa with eyes that clearly showed grief and desperation. "She's telling us that entire communities of her people have died," Lisa whispered. "This isn't just about her babies. Her entire species is in danger." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. The crystalline virus isn't just affecting individual animals. It's spreading through the entire population. The mother Volf seemed to sense that they were beginning to understand. She moved back to her babies, who were now all showing signs of recovery, and then returned to the wall. She scratched one more symbol, an arrow pointing from the research station to all the other locations. "She's asking us to help all of them," Jake said quietly. "She somehow figured out that we have the technology to cure the virus, and she's asking us to save her entire species." Lisa stared at the wall markings in amazement. "Jake, do you realize what this means? She's not just intelligent, she's capable of complex abstract thinking. She understood cause and effect well enough to know that bringing her babies here might lead to a cure for everyone." The mother Volf made another series of sounds and pointed to different locations on her makeshift map. Jake had the feeling she was trying to tell them something about timing, that they needed to act quickly before it was too late. "We need to contact the colonial government," Jake said. "This is beyond what we can handle alone. We need resources, medical supplies, and transport to reach all these locations." Lisa nodded but looked worried. "Jake, do you think they'll believe us? The idea of highly intelligent frost wolves working with humans. It sounds impossible." The mother Wolf seemed to understand their concern. She walked over to the communication console and very carefully pressed the button that Jake had shown her earlier activated the recording function. Then she returned to the wall and began scratching more complex mathematical formulas. Jake watched in amazement as the mother Wolf scratched out equations that showed the relationship between temperature, virus concentration, and treatment effectiveness. She was providing them with scientific data that would help them treat other infected frost wolves. She's giving us the information we need to convince the authorities, Jake realized. She's providing proof of her intelligence and cooperation. The mother Wolf finished her mathematical presentation and looked at Jake and Lisa expectantly. She had done everything she could to communicate the urgency of the situation. Now it was up to them to convince other humans to help. Jake began composing an emergency message to the Colonial Science Council. As he typed, he realized that this moment would change everything. The discovery of true intelligence in the frost wolves would revolutionize how humans thought about other species. But more importantly, it would test humanity's willingness to help when another intelligent species was facing extinction. The mother Wolf returned to her babies, who were now all awake and moving normally. She looked at Jake and Lisa with trust and hope in her eyes. She had shown them the scope of the crisis, provided them with the scientific data they needed, and demonstrated her people's intelligence and capacity for cooperation. Now everything depended on whether the humans would choose to help save an entire species, or whether they would let fear and prejudice prevent them from acting. The mother Wolf had done her part. The fate of her people now rested in human hands. Jake finished typing his message and looked at the send button. Once he pressed it, there would be no going back. The relationship between humans and frost wolves would never be the same. He looked at the mother Wolf, who was gently caring for her recovered babies, and made his choice. He pressed send. The response from the Colonial Science Council came faster than Jake had expected. Within 6 hours of sending his message, 3 large shuttles were landing outside the research station. Jake watched through the window as teams of scientists and medical personnel unloaded equipment and supplies. Commander Kate Williams was the first person through the airlock. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She stopped dead when she saw the mother Wolf sitting calmly beside her 3 healthy babies, watching the new arrivals with curious but unafraid eyes. "This is the creature you described in your report?" Kate asked, her voice carefully controlled. "Her name is Luna," Jake said, using the name he and Lisa had started calling the mother Wolf. "And yes, she's exactly as intelligent as we described." Kate approached Luna slowly, her hands visible and non-threatening. Luna watched her carefully but didn't move away. When Kate stopped a few feet away, Luna made a soft sound that Jake had learned meant greeting. "Hello, Luna," Kate said quietly. "I'm Kate. I'm here to help you and your people." Luna's ears perked up at the word people, and she looked at Jake with what seemed like surprise. Jake realized that Luna was beginning to understand that the humans saw her species as more than just animals. "Show her the wall," Lisa suggested. "She needs to see what Luna has told us." Kate examined the mathematical equations and map that Luna had scratched into the wall. Her expression grew more serious with each symbol she studied. Finally, she turned back to Luna, who was watching her reaction carefully. "You're asking us to help save your entire species," Kate said to Luna. "That's a big responsibility." Luna stood up and walked to the wall. She scratched a new symbol, a circle with lines radiating out from it. Then she pointed to herself, then to Jake and Lisa, then to Kate. The meaning was clear. She was asking all of them to work together. "She's forming an alliance," Kate said, with amazement. "She's asking for a formal partnership between our species." Over the next hour, more team members arrived. Dr. Pete Rogers, the mission's lead biologist, was initially skeptical about Luna's intelligence until she demonstrated her ability to read and respond to his computer displays. Medical Officer Nancy Clark was won over when Luna helped her understand the optimal dosage of treatment by scratching precise mathematical calculations, but the real test came when Luna led them to the first group of infected frost wolves, the Location was a sheltered valley about 20 miles from the research station. Luna guided the convoy of vehicles through the treacherous ice fields, occasionally stopping to scratch directions in the snow when the GPS systems failed in the harsh conditions. When they reached the valley, Jake's heart sank. Dozens of frost wolves lay scattered across the frozen ground. Many weren't moving at all. Others were barely breathing, their crystalline fur brittle with frost. Luna ran ahead of the human team. Moving from one fallen wolf to another, she would sniff each one, then make different sounds depending on what she found. Jake realized she was triaging the patients, identifying which ones were most likely to survive with treatment. "She's teaching us their medical condition by sound," Nancy said in amazement. "Each sound means something different about their health status." The rescue operation became a coordinated effort between humans and Luna. She would identify the most critical patients, then help the human medics position them for treatment. When the portable heating units needed to be set up, Luna showed them the optimal positions by moving the sick wolves herself. But the most remarkable moment came when Luna began communicating with the other frost wolves. She made a series of complex sounds, and the wolves who were still conscious began to respond. Slowly, the healthier wolves began helping move the sicker ones into treatment areas. "She's organizing them," Kate said in wonder. "She's explaining to them what we're doing and asking them to cooperate." The treatment process was exhausting. Each wolf needed individual attention, and the cure had to be administered at precisely the right temperature and dosage. But Luna proved to be an invaluable assistant. She seemed to understand each step of the medical process and could anticipate what the human team needed. As the hours passed, more wolves began to recover. The first sign of success was when a young wolf opened its eyes and made a weak sound. Luna immediately moved to its side, gently nuzzling it and making encouraging sounds. "She's telling him he's going to be okay," Lisa said, watching the interaction. "She's reassuring him." By evening, they had treated 37 wolves in the valley. 28 were showing signs of recovery. It was exhausting work, but Luna never seemed to tire. She moved from patient to patient, helping with treatments and providing comfort to the sick wolves, but the mission took a dangerous turn when a massive blizzard moved in unexpectedly. The wind was so strong that it knocked over several pieces of equipment, and the temperature dropped so fast that some of the treatment solutions began to freeze. Dr. Rogers was trying to rescue a critical piece of equipment when he slipped on the ice and fell. He was unconscious and bleeding, and the storm was too strong for the other humans to reach him safely. Luna saw what happened immediately. Without hesitation, she ran into the storm. The wind was so strong that even her massive form was pushed around by it. But she fought her way to Dr. Rogers. She carefully picked him up in her mouth and carried him back to the shelter, but the effort cost her. Luna had been fighting the crystalline virus in her own body, and the extreme cold and physical strain caused her condition to worsen rapidly. By the time she brought Dr. Rogers to safety, she was barely able to stand. "Luna!" Jake rushed to her, sighed as she collapsed. Her breathing was shallow, and her fur was white with frost. The virus was spreading through her system faster than ever. Kate immediately began preparing an emergency treatment for Luna while Nancy worked on Dr. Rogers. The other wolves in the valley seemed to sense that Luna was in danger. They began making sounds that could only be described as worried calls. "She saved Rogers' life," Kate said as she worked. "She risked her own life to save one of us." Jake held Luna's massive head in his lap as Kate administered the treatment. Luna's blue eyes looked up at him with trust and exhaustion. She had given everything she had to save both her own people and the humans who had come to help them. "Hold on, Luna," Jake whispered. "We're going to save you, just like you saved us." The storm raged outside, but inside the shelter, two species worked together to save lives. Luna had shown them what true cooperation looked like, and now it was their turn to prove that the alliance she had requested was real. 3 months had passed since the Great Rescue Mission. Jake stood at the window of what was once his lonely research station, watching Luna's 3 babies play in the snow outside. They had grown strong and healthy, their crystalline fur shining in the morning sunlight. The smallest one, who had been closest to death, was now the most playful of the three. The research station had changed completely. What used to be a simple scientific outpost was now a bustling center of cooperation between humans and frost wolves. New buildings had been added to house the translation equipment, medical facilities and meeting spaces where both species could work together. Luna walked up beside Jake, moving with the quiet grace that had amazed him from their first meeting. She was wearing a special collar that Jake had designed, a translation device that could turn her complex sounds into human words, and human speech into sounds she could understand. "Good morning, Jake," Luna's voice came through the translator. It was strange to hear her thoughts in human words, but Jake had gotten used to it over the past months. "Good morning, Luna," Jake replied. "How are the morning patrols going?" "Very well. My people report that the virus has been completely eliminated from the Northern Territories. The last infected pack was cured yesterday," Luna's translator conveyed. Not just her words, but also her tone, and Jake could hear the relief in her voice. It had taken 2 more months of intensive work to reach all the infected Frost-Volf communities across the frozen moon. Luna had been essential to the effort, serving as both translator and coordinator. She had organized her people into efficient groups, helped establish treatment centers, and even trained other frost wolves to assist with the medical procedures. Commander Kate Williams had been so impressed with Luna's leadership abilities that she had officially appointed her as the first non-human liaison officer in colonial history. Luna now held a formal position in the human government, representing her species in all decisions that affected both humans and frost wolves. "Jake, I have something to show you," Luna said, her translator picking up the excitement in her voice. "My people have been working on a project, a gift for the humans who saved us." Jake followed Luna outside, where a group of adult frost wolves were waiting. They led him to a clearing where something amazing had been built. The frost wolves had used their natural abilities to shape ice and snow into a complex structure that looked like a combination of art and science. "It's a communication network," Luna explained. "My people can create ice formations that carry sound across great distances. We've built a system that connects all the Frost-Volf communities on the moon. Now families can stay in contact even when they're separated by hundreds of miles." Jake stared at the beautiful ice sculptures in amazement. The frost wolves had created something that was both functional and artistic, using abilities that humans had never imagined they possessed. "Luna, this is incredible. But you said it was a gift for humans?" "The network can carry human communications too," Luna said. "Your people often get isolated during the big storms. The system will help keep everyone connected and safe." Dr. Rogers approached the group, walking with a slight limp from his injury during the blizzard rescue. He had recovered fully, but he would never forget that Luna had risked her life to save him. "Luna, the Colonial Council has approved the expansion project," he said. "We'll be building 5 more cooperation centers across the moon. Each one will have both human and Frost-Volf staff." Luna made a sound that the translator converted into something like a purr of satisfaction. "My people are excited to work with humans. We have learned so much from each other." Jake thought about how much had changed since that desperate night when Luna first brought her dying babies to his door. The relationship between humans and frost wolves had revolutionized both species. Understanding of intelligence and cooperation. The frost wolves had proven to be incredibly valuable partners. Their natural abilities helped humans understand the moon's weather patterns and navigate safely through dangerous terrain. Their intelligence and problem-solving skills had led to breakthrough discoveries in ice engineering and cold weather survival, but the humans had given the frost wolves something even more valuable. They had given them a future. Without the cure for the crystalline virus, Luna's entire species would have gone extinct within a few more months. "Luna, I've been thinking about something," Jake said. "When you first came to my station, how did you know that humans might be able to help?" Luna's translator was quiet for a moment as she considered the question. My people had been watching the human settlements for many seasons. We saw how you used tools and worked together to solve problems. When the sickness began killing our babies, I thought maybe your medicine could help where ours could not. But bringing your babies to us was incredibly dangerous? You had no way of knowing if we would help or hurt you. I watched you, Jake. Martinez, Luna said. I saw how you cared for your machines and your plants. I saw how you protected small things from the cold. A being who protects small things will protect babies too. Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. Luna had risked everything on her faith in human compassion, and that trust had saved her entire species. Lisa approached the group, carrying a tablet with data readings. Jake, Luna, you need to see this. We just received reports from other human colonies throughout the galaxy. Similar cooperation partnerships are forming with local species on at least 12 different worlds. Jake's eyes widened. You mean what happened here is happening elsewhere? It seems like Luna's story has inspired both humans and aliens throughout. Human space, Lisa explained. Species that were once considered hostile or primitive are reaching out to human colonies for cooperation, and the humans are responding with help instead of fear. Luna made a sound that was clearly pleased. My children's story has become a story of hope for many species. Jake looked around at the bustling cooperation center, at the human and Frost. Volf children playing together, at the beautiful ice communication network that would keep communities connected. He thought about Luna's courage in trusting a strange species with her most precious possessions, and about humanity's choice to respond with compassion instead of fear. Luna, I think you've started something bigger than just saving your people. Jake said, I think you've started a new age of cooperation between species. Luna looked at her 3 healthy babies playing in the snow, then at the humans and frost wolves working together around the center. Perhaps, she said, but it started with something simple. A mother who needed help and beings who chose to give it. As the sun set over the frozen moon, Jake watched Luna's babies chase each other through the snow while human children laughed and joined their game. It was a sight that would have been impossible just months ago, but now it seemed like the most natural thing in the world. The future was full of possibilities that none of them had imagined before Luna scratched that desperate plea on his door. And it had all started with the simple recognition that love and the desire to protect one's children was universal, no matter what species you were.